This episode was brought to you by Pentester Academy, the leader in online cybersecurity education. Join over 10,000 professionals from 90 countries to learn security online. Also brought to you by Hacker Arsenal, artillery for cyber warriors. Visit us on hackerarsenal.com to check out our latest attack defense gadgets. I'm Marley Oxenome from Pentester Academy TV, and welcome to our show, Access Point, where we spotlight cybersecurity companies and give an inside look at the people and technology behind the latest advancements in the industry. Today, I will be speaking with the company Elevate Security. I'm sitting down right now with Masha Sedova, who is CPO and co-founder of the company. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I got a lot of great questions here from our tech team, so you ready to get started?
Sure am.
Okay, so I got a fun one to start off with first. So now, given that humans are error prone, do you ever think that there will ever come a day where all employees are so security aware that breaches are no longer an issue?
You know, I love this question.
Yeah.
Because I think that having that kind of mentality as a security practitioner is a huge reason why we are where we are today. So we think that employees outside of security are incapable of understanding proper security protocols, are always going to fall, and we have to mitigate that as much as possible. And we don't do a great job of respecting the end user. We call them users, weakest link, the problem between the keyboard and the chair, right? Without ever actually giving them the credit of being intelligent, capable human beings who are hired for our organizations, our companies, to contribute in a meaningful way that may not be security. Because if they were trying to contribute from a security perspective, they'd probably be on the security team with us.
Good point.
So if we reframe our thinking and say these are intelligent human beings and it is our job as security people to be able to communicate with them and bring them along on the journey of security, it becomes our responsibility, not their fault, for getting them to a place where they can be security champions and actually help defend organizations against cyber attacks. So if we believe that that's possible, everything from that place happens. You create many more opportunities of thinking, well, how can I empower someone to make the right decision, instead of defaulting to the fact that they're always going to make the wrong decision, and we have to mitigate them as some kind of control or virus or you know, like a pest that needs fencing, and instead looking at what is the positive capability that can happen from an empowered set of employees.
Got it. That was a wonderful explanation. It's the first time I've heard that. I like it.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so now can you describe your product in more detail for me? Is it technology-driven or process-driven?
Yeah, so when we set out to create Elevate Security, we really wanted a product that, as I mentioned earlier, sets out to create the most potential impact of an employee in an organization in defending it. So we're building a product that can measure, motivate, and educate employees on security behaviors. And it's not just communication, it's not just awareness, but it's actually measured behavior change. And that's a really important pivot from the current thinking of security awareness solutions today. So what is the measurable outcome I want from my product?
Right.
And the very first thing that we're building is getting to the motivation aspect of it. And we just had our first release of a product called Hacker's Mind.
Okay.
And it's a group-based game done. It's designed to be played as a team in an organization of non-security practitioners. And it introduces you to what it's like to be inside the mind of a hacker.
Oh, wow.
And the reason we designed it like this is because if we give people the understanding of what they're trying to defend against, who are these actors, why would they attack me, what is it that I have that is of interest to them, and to what lengths are these black hats going to go to get access to this, I now understand what it is I'm trying to defend against. And from there, any future security training or education becomes a pull from an employee. You've given me context. I now want to defend myself instead of you shoving me security video after security video, which has no relevance to my role or my job, and it doesn't respect my intelligence. So the goal of Hacker's Mind, as I was saying earlier, is a group-based simulation that really essentially is gamified lightweight threat modeling.
Okay.
Why would an attacker want the things I have, and how would they get after me? All done from the perspective of a hacker.
Very cool. And when you do say gamified, what kinds of games do you mean?
Sure. So this is a quick nitpick.
Yeah.
Gamification is the process of taking game mechanics and applying them to not necessarily games, but business objectives, making something more impactful, getting to more outcomes that you want because you have game elements.
Gotcha.
So motivation, things like getting feedback, group play, choice and autonomy, elements of mastery. All these things make games successful and applying them to game mechanics.
Got it.
So elements of playing it with the group. There's competition within the exercise where you compete against your coworkers to see who can come up with the most creative attack.
Oh, okay.
Compete and the most creative group wins. And all of that also can be pulled out into a larger program around how well do you actually do in responding to attacks afterwards.
Very cool. Okay. And so now, when an employee performs poorly on a test, should a reward or punishment approach be used?
Yeah. So I love this question because I feel like we as a security industry have spent decades punishing employees for doing the wrong thing. We set out a lot of compliance requirements, password changing, and a long list of things that employees shouldn't do. And then when they do it, we punish them and say, how dare you? But whenever they do the right thing, we say nothing. We say nothing. And so we've done a great job at showing employees everything they shouldn't do and creating a negative relationship with the security team by punishing them when they do. And then complete silence, no appreciation for the fact that when they do report suspicious attack, go out of their current day job to fix a vulnerability that they see. A lot of that is thankless work. So thinking through programs and saying, well, I have this behavior I want to change. It could be any behavior. It could be secure coding practices for your developers. It could be increasing reporting rates of phishing attacks. It could be giving out, reducing the amount of critical information you're giving out over the phone. And yes, when someone does something negative, you should consider ramifications, and we can talk about what it means to shame. But when they do the correct thing, finding opportunities to reward and recognize them is incredibly important because it signals, I would like that, I would like you to do more of that.
Yes.
We do that with our children, we do that with our pets.
True.
We don't do it with our peers in companies and in organizations, and we absolutely should. And why this is all really important is because when we punish, as a security team, the rest of our employees, we create animosity between security and the rest of the organization. And when we call our employees gullible and the weakest link and punish them, no one wants to do security. Of course they're going to click on things and say, it's not my job. There's someone else. I don't even really like that team. I don't want to report suspicious things or when I've made a mistake because I'm afraid I'm going to get in trouble. And who are these people doing anyway? And so if you humanize that relationship and make them positive and reward for good behavior, you create a much stronger connection between security and people's minds.
Wow, that's an excellent point. Okay. And so now regarding the motive part of the cycle, how does this work exactly? And can you describe team simulations and the offensive approach in more detail for me?
Sure. So motivation is a core component of behavior change. We can talk about that in a little bit. But in order for someone to do something, they need to be able to be motivated to do it.
Absolutely.
Right? I may know how to change my passwords. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it if I'm not motivated, right?
That's a good point, yeah.
So motivation is a core fundamental aspect of behavior change that is completely missing right now from the industry. There's just a baseline assumption that people don't know, so if I just keep shoving more information at you, you're going to do something differently. And that hasn't proved to be successful in the decades we've tried it. So from a motivation perspective, the simulation I was mentioning earlier really gets people to think critically and make decisions for themselves and say, I understand the scope of the problem I'm trying to solve for, and I can gauge whether or not this fits in context of my work and not. So I'm getting a phishing email, right? And does this make sense or not? And then am I motivated to do something about that? Or do I not care? I don't and because it takes effort, it takes mental effort to critically think about something. And security practitioners care because they understand the ramifications of it. They understand the bigger picture. They know what happens if, let's say, you click on a link, the malware executes, they infect my system, they have my passwords, I'm host, right?
Snowballs, yep.
Yeah, and I know what would happen. Most employees don't understand that context, and they can't switch and say, I need to care, and I need to stop and care about this long enough for me to do something different. And so spending time on motivation and it's one of the core things we're trying to address through Hacker's Mind. Why do you need to spend the time and care to care about this? Because without that, it's just an uphill battle around shoving things down people's throats.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and now can you explain how you're applying behavioral and data science to this problem for me in more detail?
Sure, totally. So, as I was mentioning earlier, there is a model of behavior change.
Right.
So there's 3 things that's required for it. It is motivation to do something, the ability to do something, and reminder. The combination of all those 3 things need to exist for a new habit or a new behavior to exist.
Okay.
So our first product is specifically focused on motivation. But the ability aspect of it, so how do I get you to know what you need to do differently? So you might care about phishing, but now you need to know how to detect it.
True.
That changes based on your role. So as a finance practitioner, you might have slightly different needs, W-2s or wire transfers, than a developer who's asking for admin credentials, or you're navigating to different types of websites than your finance people or an executive. So understanding the type of person that we are communicating with is really critical, as well as being able to deliver not just motivation, but the ability that's related to that person. So from a data science perspective, in order for us to deliver the right education to the right person at the right time, there's a lot of data aggregation. And I know Robert speaks a little bit about that when you'll talk to him. But what we're finding is that if you can collect all this rich information about an end user, you can be able to create much more custom education ability paths for the end user, and that can be recommended with an algorithm or through learning over time what resonates best with different types of users and groups.
Wonderful. Okay. And so now I know that new security threats are being discovered every single day. How does your solution stay ahead and ensure employees are trained in a timely way?
Sure. So you can do the whack-a-mole kind of security training where you're constantly saying there's this new threat here, there's this new threat here. But in my belief, that's treating your employees like they're kindergartners or first graders, and they don't have the ability to critically think themselves. And so I have to show you exactly what it is that you're matching. Right? So if you see this email, you need to do this.
Yeah.
But if I spend some time teaching you how to critically think about it, so again, back to who are your attackers, what are they trying to get at, and what are the different venues that they're going to try to get at you. And I actually find that setting this up in a way where you think about it offensively, how would I attack myself? Where am I most vulnerable?
Yes.
When you see an attack that slightly matches it, you'll say, oh, I remember that. And so you're essentially asking people to critically think. And if you never spend time training people on that, they're not going to do it. But if you do invest in ability to critically think about the threats, it's the same way that anyone who is more knowledgeable about security can detect a new type of phishing attack without ever having seen an example of it before.
Okay. And now lastly, where do you hope to see the industry in the next 5 years?
Yeah. So I think a core part of this that's missing in this industry right now is the ability to measure impact. Right now, best practices often include things like sending out newsletters, posters, a whole bunch of online computer-based training with an annual security training that's required. And that's it. And then ongoing phishing. No one has ever asked, what is the actual impact of all this effort, and what is the outcome that I really want to get to? It's not that no one has asked. No one has bothered to really sit down and measure it. Because my belief is that if you measure this, you'll find that newsletters aren't actually impactful. It doesn't matter how many people read it. The question is, what will people do afterwards? Right? It's not how many people completed a training. It's how many people stopped clicking on malware after they completed that training.
Absolutely.
And if you can start asking different questions and measuring the results of those questions, I suspect that this industry will look vastly different than the best practices that we have today. And what I really hope that Elevate brings, but also a lot of new companies on this horizon brings, the ability to measure the impact of any type of campaign and see what works and what doesn't work.
Wonderful. Hope to see that really soon then.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure.
And that's all the time we have for today, so be sure to tune in next time for another episode of Access Point. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook so you don't miss out on any of the latest cybersecurity news. This episode is brought to you by Pentester Academy, the leader in online cybersecurity education. Join over 10,000 professionals from 90 countries to learn security online. Also brought to you by Hacker Arsenal, artillery for cyber warriors. Visit us on hackerarsenal.com to check out our latest attack defense gadgets. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.